There exists in the courts of power a peculiar theatre where men and women perform daily, donning facades of wisdom while concealing the machinery of their true intellect beneath carefully constructed veils. Machiavelli understood this dance intimately, observing how the prince who appears wise may be merely cunning, while the one deemed simple might possess the most penetrating insight of all. You walk among these players every single day, perhaps unaware that you yourself have become an actor in this grand performance, your authentic intelligence hidden behind a mask you no longer remember choosing. The question that haunts the corridors of genuine self-knowledge is not whether you wear such a mask, but rather which mask has become so fused to your face that you have forgotten your original features entirely. Consider for a moment the faces you present to the world, the versions of yourself that emerge in different chambers of your life, adapting and shape-shifting according to the company you keep and the stakes at play. Machiavelli observed that the successful navigator of human affairs must possess the wisdom to know when to reveal and when to conceal, when to appear learned and when to feign ignorance, for power often belongs not to the genuinely intelligent, but to those who wield the appearance of intelligence most strategically. Yet in this endless performance, something profound and dangerous occurs. The mask begins to merge with the flesh. The performance becomes the identity and the original self. That raw and authentic intelligence you once possessed retreats so far into shadow that you can no longer distinguish between what you truly think and what you have trained yourself to display. The tragedy Machiavelli witnessed in the halls of Florence and beyond was not that men lacked intelligence, but that they imprisoned their genuine faculties behind walls of pretense, suffocating their natural insight beneath layers of learned behavior and social conditioning. You have been taught since childhood which thoughts merit expression and which must remain forever unspoken, which questions elevate your status and which mark you as dangerous or naive. Through years of careful conditioning, you have sculpted your intellectual presentation into something acceptable, something that opens doors and closes others, something that protects you from judgment, while simultaneously imprisoning you within a cage of your own construction. What Machiavelli understood with crystalline clarity is that intelligence itself becomes a weapon in the theater of human interaction. And like all weapons, it can be wielded openly or concealed until the precise moment of necessity. The mask you wear is not arbitrary. It serves a function, protects a vulnerability, advances an agenda you may not even consciously recognize. Perhaps you wear the mask of the skeptic, questioning everything to avoid the vulnerability of belief. Perhaps you don the facade of the optimist, your relentless positivity a shield against confronting uncomfortable truths. Perhaps you have chosen the mask of the intellectual, your complex vocabulary and abstract reasoning a moat around the simple fears and desires you dare not acknowledge. But here, in this moment of raw honesty, you must confront an unsettling truth that Machiavelli would have recognized immediately. The mask you believe protects you has become your prison, and the intelligence you think you project may be the very barrier preventing others from witnessing the profound wisdom you actually possess. The performance has consumed the performer, and you stand at a crossroads where recognition of your chosen mask becomes the first step toward either deeper entrapment or radical liberation. Which mask are you wearing? And more importantly, do you possess the courage to reach up and feel its contours, to trace the lines where artificial intelligence ends and authentic wisdom begins? The first mask Machiavelli would have identified in any court is the mask of assumed omniscience, worn by those who believe that wisdom means never admitting ignorance, never revealing the boundaries of their knowledge. You see this mask everywhere in modern life, on faces in boardrooms and classrooms, on screens large and small, where individuals perform certainty with such conviction that they almost believe their own performance. This mask transforms genuine inquiry into performance art, replacing the honest admission of not knowing with elaborate constructions designed to obscure the gaps in understanding. The wearer of this mask has learned that society rewards the appearance of knowledge more generously than it rewards the honest pursuit of truth, and so they perfect the art of speaking confidently about matters they barely comprehend. What makes this mask particularly insidious is how it stifles genuine learning, for the person who cannot admit ignorance cannot truly grow beyond their current limitations. Machiavelli observed princes who surrounded themselves with yes men, preferring comfortable agreement to challenging truth, and in doing so, they sealed themselves into intellectual tombs of their own making. When you wear the mask of omniscience, every question becomes a threat to your constructed authority. Every admission of uncertainty, a crack in the facade that might bring the entire structure crashing down. You begin to avoid situations where your knowledge might be tested, relationships where your limitations might be exposed, conversations where genuine inquiry might reveal the performer behind the performance. The tragedy deepens when you recognize how this mask isolates you from authentic connection. For true intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability requires the courage to say, "I do not know." Machiavelli would point out that the prince who never admits limitation becomes predictable, rigid, incapable of adapting to changing circumstances, because adaptation requires first acknowledging that your current approach may be insufficient. You sacrifice wisdom on the altar of appearing wise, trading genuine intelligence for its hollow performance, and in the exchange, you lose something precious and irreplaceable. This mask carries a particular weight because society has conditioned you to believe that intelligence means having answers rather than asking better questions. From your earliest education, you were rewarded for certainty and punished for confusion, trained to conceal your ignorance rather than explore it honestly. The student who admits not understanding receives lower marks than the one who confidently projects comprehension, regardless of whether either truly grasps the material. You learned quickly that the appearance of intelligence often matters more than its substance, that the performance opens doors the genuine article cannot. Yet Machiavelli understood something profound about power and knowledge that the wearer of this mask has forgotten. True strength lies not in pretending omniscience, but in knowing precisely the extent and limitations of your understanding. The general who knows exactly what he knows and what he does not can position his forces strategically. The one who pretends comprehensive knowledge marches confidently into traps he lacks the wisdom to perceive. Your mask of omniscience makes you brittle where you should be flexible, closed where you should remain open, certain where you should be curious. Consider how this mask shapes your daily interactions. The moments when you nod knowingly during conversations about topics you barely understand, when you speak with authority on matters you have never deeply investigated, when you dismiss questions because answering them honestly would require admitting the boundaries of your expertise. Each performance strengthens the mask, fusing it more firmly to your face, making the authentic intelligence beneath harder to access and eventually impossible to distinguish from the facade. You become the mask, and the mask becomes you, until the very notion of removing it feels like threatening your entire identity. The path forward, Machiavelli would counsel, requires the most difficult courage, the willingness to admit ignorance in a world that weaponizes such admissions, to ask questions in spaces that demand answers, to sit comfortably in uncertainty when others perform certainty with such conviction. Only by removing this mask of assumed omniscience can you access the genuine intelligence that lies dormant beneath years of performance. waiting to emerge into the light of authentic inquiry and honest exploration. The second mask that adorns faces throughout the corridors of power is the mask of performative skepticism, worn by those who have learned that questioning everything allows them to commit to nothing, to remain safely above the fray of genuine belief and the vulnerability it requires. Machiavelli would recognize this mask immediately, having observed courtiers who used constant doubt as a shield against taking positions that might later be used against them. This mask transforms healthy critical thinking into a defense mechanism, replacing genuine intellectual rigor with a reflexive dismissal that protects its wearer from the dangers of conviction and the responsibilities that come with sincere belief. The person wearing this mask has discovered that skepticism carries social cachet in certain circles, that appearing too discerning to be fooled elevates their status in hierarchies of intellectual sophistication. They have weaponized doubt, turning it from a tool of inquiry into an identity, from a method of investigation into a permanent posture that requires no real investigation at all. Every claim meets with raised eyebrows, every enthusiasm with knowing smirks, every genuine belief with the implicit suggestion that only the naive truly believe anything anymore. This mask allows its wearer to feel superior without the burden of constructing anything meaningful, to tear down without the vulnerability of building up. What Machiavelli understood about such individuals is that their skepticism often masks profound fear, particularly the fear of being wrong, of being deceived, of appearing foolish to those whose opinions they secretly value far too much. The mask of performative skepticism protects against these fears by preventing genuine engagement with ideas, by maintaining sufficient distance from every proposition that you can never be truly challenged or refuted. You dismiss rather than debate, you sneer rather than seriously consider, and in doing so, you protect yourself from the possibility of genuine intellectual growth that requires temporarily entertaining ideas that might transform you. This mask becomes particularly dangerous when it hardens into cynicism, when healthy questioning curdles into the assumption that all motives are base, all claims are suspect, all sincerity is performance. Machiavelli himself was often mistaken for a cynic, but his clear-eyed realism about human nature did not prevent him from recognizing genuine virtue when it appeared, or from believing that excellence was possible even in a flawed world. The wearer of the skepticism mask cannot make such distinctions because they have replaced discernment with blanket dismissal, wisdom with reflexive negation. Consider how this mask shapes your relationship with new ideas, with possibilities that excite others, with movements and causes that inspire genuine passion in those around you. While they engage fully, risking the disappointment of dashed hopes or exposed naivety, you remain safely on the sidelines. Your skepticism, a fortress that protects you from such vulnerabilities, while simultaneously preventing you from experiencing the genuine enthusiasm and commitment that gives life its deepest meaning. You tell yourself that you are simply being realistic, that you have learned the lessons others have yet to discover. But beneath this rationalization lies the fear that if you allowed yourself to truly believe in something, its potential failure might devastate you. The mask grows heavier with each performance until you find yourself unable to approach anything with genuine openness, unable to be moved by beauty or possibility because your reflexive skepticism intercepts every experience before it can touch something authentic within you. You have become so skilled at finding flaws that you can no longer perceive wholeness, so adept at identifying contradictions that you can no longer recognize coherent truth. Your intelligence, which could be a searchlight illuminating genuine understanding, has become a weapon you turn on every idea that approaches, destroying them before they can reveal whether they carried wisdom or delusion. Machiavelli would counsel that true intelligence requires the courage to believe provisionally, to engage fully with ideas, while maintaining the capacity to revise your understanding when evidence demands it. The removal of this mask requires risking the very vulnerabilities it was designed to prevent. The possibility of being wrong, of being deceived, of discovering that some of your cherished skepticism was merely intellectual cowardice dressed in sophisticated language. Only by laying down this defensive posture can you access the genuine discernment that distinguishes wisdom from gullibility, healthy questioning from paralyzing doubt. The third mask Machiavelli would identify is perhaps the most insidious, the mask of intellectual humility that conceals profound arrogance, worn by those who have learned that self-deprecation can be a powerful form of manipulation and control. This mask appears to be the opposite of the omniscience mask, presenting a face of constant questioning and uncertainty. But beneath this humble exterior lies a conviction so deep and unexamined that it cannot tolerate genuine challenge. The wearer of this mask has discovered that by constantly announcing their own limitations, they can deflect criticism while never actually reconsidering their fundamental assumptions about how the world works and their place within it. You recognize this mask by its particular performance, the individual who begins every assertion with, "I could be wrong, but," or "I am certainly no expert," but then, before proceeding to speak with absolute certainty about complex matters. This rhetorical humility serves as armor against contradiction, for anyone who challenges their claims must first overcome the barrier of appearing to attack someone who has already admitted their fallibility. Machiavelli would note how this strategy allows its practitioners to advance controversial positions while maintaining plausible deniability, to stake claims without accepting the responsibilities that come with genuine conviction. What makes this mask particularly effective is how it grants its wearer the psychological satisfaction of feeling humble while never engaging in the actual work of humility, which requires genuinely questioning your deepest assumptions and remaining open to perspectives that might fundamentally alter your worldview. True humility is active and uncomfortable. It requires sitting with the possibility that you might be profoundly wrong about matters you consider settled, that your understanding might be incomplete in ways you cannot yet perceive. The mask of intellectual humility allows you to perform this discomfort without ever experiencing it, to appear open while remaining fundamentally closed. Machiavelli understood that in the courts of power, appearing weak could be a form of strength, that seeming uncertain could be a way of testing the loyalty and honesty of those around you. But he would recognize immediately the difference between strategic displays of vulnerability and the performative humility that has become epidemic in certain intellectual circles. The strategic vulnerability serves a purpose and then concludes. The performative humility never ends because it is not vulnerability at all, but rather a defense mechanism that has learned to disguise itself as its opposite. Consider how this mask operates in your own life. The moments when you preface your strongest opinions with false uncertainty, when you disguise your judgments as mere observations, when you cloak your convictions in the language of perpetual questioning. This performance allows you to advance your worldview while appearing to hold it lightly, to influence others while seeming to claim no influence, to exercise intellectual authority while denying that you possess any such thing. You tell yourself that you are simply being appropriately cautious. The genuine humility requires constant self-doubt. But beneath this narrative lies an unexamined certainty that never truly subjects itself to the scrutiny you claim to embrace. The mask becomes most visible in moments of genuine disagreement, when someone offers a perspective that truly challenges your understanding rather than merely quibbling with details. In these moments, the performative humility often drops, replaced by defensive argumentation or subtle condescension toward those who dare question your supposedly tentative positions. You discover that your intellectual humility extended only to areas where you never felt truly challenged, that your openness was real only for ideas that did not threaten your fundamental framework for understanding reality. The removal of this mask requires something more difficult than replacing it with genuine humility, for true humility cannot be performed or achieved through conscious effort. Instead, Machiavelli would suggest, you must develop the capacity to notice when your professed uncertainty is authentic and when it serves as sophisticated armor against genuine questioning. You must learn to distinguish between the discomfort of actual doubt and the performance of doubt that allows you to appear wise while remaining fundamentally unchanged. Only then can intelligence flow freely, unobstructed by the elaborate defenses that have learned to disguise themselves as their opposite. The fourth mask that adorns the face of intelligence is the mask of systematic thinking, worn by those who have learned to trust only frameworks, methodologies, and structured approaches, while distrusting the wisdom that cannot be categorized or contained within established systems. Machiavelli would recognize this mask on the faces of those advisors who could quote every classical text but could not read the immediate political moment, who understood every principle but lacked the practical wisdom to know when principles must be set aside for pragmatic necessity. This mask transforms intelligence into a kind of bureaucracy, replacing genuine insight with procedural thinking, authentic understanding with the memorization and application of external frameworks. The wearer of this mask has found comfort in the belief that intelligence means mastering systems of thought created by others, that wisdom lies in properly applying established methodologies rather than developing the intuitive capacity to perceive truth directly. They trust the map more than the territory, the model more than reality itself, and when reality contradicts their frameworks, they often conclude that reality must be wrong, rather than questioning whether their systems might be inadequate. Machiavelli observed this tendency among scholars who could recite Aristotle and Cicero, but could not navigate the treacherous waters of actual political life, their heads so filled with theory that they had no room for the messy, contradictory, pattern-breaking reality that exists outside the library. This mask provides its wearer with a sense of security and legitimacy, for established frameworks carry institutional authority that personal insight does not. When you speak from within a recognized system of thought, you can borrow its credibility, presenting your ideas as applications of established wisdom rather than as your own potentially fallible perceptions. This allows you to avoid the vulnerability of genuine original thought while still participating in intellectual discourse, to remain safely within boundaries that others have drawn rather than risking the wilderness of unstructured inquiry. Yet Machiavelli understood something essential about genuine intelligence that the wearer of this mask has forgotten. The most important insights often emerge precisely where established frameworks fail, in the spaces between categories, in the contradictions that reveal the limitations of current understanding. The person who can only think systematically will miss these crucial moments of potential breakthrough because they lack the flexibility to perceive what their frameworks cannot accommodate. They become like judges who can only deliver verdicts on cases that match precedent, helpless when confronted with genuinely novel situations that require thinking beyond established categories. Consider how this mask operates in your own intellectual life. The moments when you reach for a framework rather than sitting with raw experience, when you categorize before truly perceiving, when you apply a methodology before determining whether the situation actually calls for that particular approach. You have learned that systematic thinking appears more intelligent than intuitive insight, that citing established theories elevates your credibility more than sharing direct observations, that operating within recognized paradigms feels safer than venturing into territory where the old maps no longer apply. The tragedy of this mask is that it can coexist with genuine intelligence, can actually develop through the process of serious education and intellectual training. You are not pretending to understand frameworks. You genuinely do comprehend them, can apply them skillfully, can speak their languages fluently. But in the process of mastering these systems, you have lost touch with another form of intelligence that operates more directly, that can perceive patterns without first translating them into established categories, that can recognize truth without needing to verify it against external authorities. Machiavelli himself demonstrated the integration of systematic knowledge with practical wisdom, drawing on classical learning while remaining ruthlessly focused on the concrete realities of power and human nature as they actually operated rather than as theory suggested they should operate. The removal of this mask does not require abandoning frameworks or rejecting systematic thinking, but rather placing them in proper relationship to direct perception and intuitive understanding. You must learn to hold systems lightly enough that you can set them aside when reality demands it, to trust your own intelligence even when it perceives something that current frameworks cannot accommodate, to venture beyond the boundaries of established thought when genuine inquiry leads you there. The fifth mask that disguises authentic intelligence is the mask of emotional detachment, worn by those who believe that true thinking requires the suppression of feeling, that genuine intelligence operates only in the realm of pure reason, untainted by the messy complications of human emotion. Machiavelli would find grim humor in this mask, having observed countless supposedly rational actors whose coldly calculated strategies were actually driven by unexamined passions they refused to acknowledge, whose claim to pure reason merely disguised the operation of unconscious emotional forces that shaped their thinking far more than they realized. This mask transforms intelligence into something brittle and incomplete, cutting you off from essential sources of information about reality in the mistaken belief that feelings contaminate rather than complement rational analysis. The person wearing this mask has internalized a false dichotomy between thinking and feeling, between intelligence and emotion, believing that the two exist in opposition rather than in necessary partnership. They pride themselves on making decisions without emotional influence, on analyzing situations purely rationally, on remaining unmoved by appeals to sentiment or compassion. Yet Machiavelli understood what modern neuroscience has confirmed, that emotion and reason are inseparable, that the attempt to eliminate feeling from decision-making does not produce purer rationality, but rather different, often worse, decisions based on unacknowledged emotional reactions that operate beneath conscious awareness. This mask serves multiple functions for its wearer, protecting them from the vulnerability that comes with acknowledging and processing difficult emotions, while simultaneously elevating their status in cultures that mistake emotional suppression for intellectual sophistication. You learn to speak of matters that should provoke outrage or compassion in flat, analytical terms, to discuss human suffering as though it were merely data to be processed, to approach questions of justice or morality as purely logical problems, divorced from the lived experience of those affected. This performance of detachment allows you to avoid the discomfort of genuine empathy while maintaining the belief that you are thinking more clearly than those who allow themselves to feel. Yet, as Machiavelli observed in his analysis of effective princes, the leader who cannot read the emotional landscape of their domain, who cannot sense the mood of their people or anticipate the passions that drive human behavior, will fail regardless of how perfectly rational their strategies appear on paper. Intelligence divorced from emotional awareness is intelligence operating with incomplete information. Like a computer trying to predict human behavior using only logical algorithms while ignoring the irrational but powerful forces that actually drive most decisions and actions. Consider how this mask operates in your own life. The moments when you retreat into analytical thinking to avoid feeling something difficult, when you dismiss emotional considerations as irrelevant to genuine understanding, when you pride yourself on remaining unmoved while others react with passion to injustice or tragedy. This performance of detachment may make you feel superior, may protect you from emotional pain, but it simultaneously cuts you off from essential information about human reality that no amount of pure reason can provide. The mask becomes most visible and most damaging in contexts that require genuine human connection, in relationships where emotional attunement matters more than logical analysis. In situations where the rational solution overlooks crucial human factors that determine whether a course of action will actually succeed. You find yourself confused when others do not respond, as logic suggests they should. Frustrated when human behavior refuses to conform to rational models. Unable to understand why your perfectly reasoned arguments fail to persuade those who are moved more by feeling than by analysis. What Machiavelli would recognize immediately is that this mask of emotional detachment often conceals deep emotional wounds that its wearer cannot bear to examine, that the retreat into pure reason frequently represents an escape from feelings too painful or threatening to acknowledge. The person who claims to think without feeling has not transcended emotion, but has merely driven it underground, where it continues to operate in distorted and destructive ways precisely because it remains unexamined and unintegrated with conscious awareness. The removal of this mask requires something more challenging than simply allowing yourself to feel. For authentic integration of emotion and intelligence demands developing the capacity to experience feelings fully, while neither being overwhelmed by them nor using them as the sole basis for decision-making. Machiavelli himself demonstrated this integration, writing with genuine passion about political matters while maintaining the analytical clarity to perceive patterns and principles that emotion alone could not reveal. The goal is not to replace rational thinking with emotional reaction, but to develop a more complete intelligence that draws on both sources of wisdom, that can feel deeply while thinking clearly, that recognizes emotion as essential data rather than contamination to be purged. The sixth mask Machiavelli would identify in any gathering of supposed intellectuals is the mask of contrarian thinking, worn by those who have discovered that automatic opposition to prevailing opinions creates the appearance of independent thought, without requiring the genuine work of developing original perspectives. This mask transforms critical thinking into a performance of reflexive disagreement, replacing authentic intellectual independence with a predictable pattern of opposition that is ultimately just as conformist as blind agreement, merely inverted. The wearer of this mask believes themselves a free thinker precisely because they take positions opposite to the mainstream, failing to recognize that defining yourself through opposition is still allowing others to determine your intellectual territory. You recognize this mask by its characteristic performance. Whatever position the majority holds, the contrarian automatically stakes out the opposite ground, regardless of whether evidence or reason actually supports that contrary stance. If consensus builds around a particular interpretation of events, they immediately search for alternative explanations, not because they have independently examined the evidence and reached different conclusions, but because opposition itself has become their identity. Machiavelli would note how such individuals believe themselves bold truth-tellers, while actually remaining entirely dependent on the mainstream positions they define themselves against, like shadows that exist only in relation to light. This mask provides its wearer with numerous psychological benefits, offering a sense of intellectual courage and independence without the actual risks that come with genuinely original thought. Taking contrary positions feels brave and creates the illusion of thinking for yourself, even when you are merely reacting against others rather than developing authentic perspectives based on your own careful observation and analysis. The contrarian can feel superior to the masses who accept conventional wisdom, while never doing the difficult work of actually investigating whether conventional wisdom might, in any particular case, be correct. What makes this mask particularly seductive is how our current cultural moment rewards contrarianism, how being skeptical of mainstream narratives has become its own form of social currency in certain circles. Machiavelli would recognize this dynamic immediately, understanding how the appearance of independent thought can be monetized and status elevated without requiring the substance of genuine intellectual courage. The true independent thinker risks everything by speaking truth regardless of whether it aligns with or opposes prevailing opinion. The contrarian risks nothing because their positions are predictable inversions that certain audiences actively seek and reward. Consider how this mask might operate in your own thinking patterns. The moments when you automatically dismiss claims, not because you have examined them carefully, but because they come from sources you have categorized as mainstream or establishment. You pride yourself on questioning narratives, but you have developed your own unquestioned narrative about how official stories are always suspect, how the opposite of conventional wisdom is likely true, how your opposition itself demonstrates your intellectual independence. This creates a different kind of conformity, just as rigid as mainstream acceptance, but disguised as rebellion. The tragedy of this mask is that it prevents you from recognizing truth when it happens to align with majority opinion, makes you automatically suspicious of consensus, even when that consensus emerges from careful study and honest investigation. You become intellectually predictable in your very attempt to be unpredictable, conformist in your very performance of nonconformity. Machiavelli would observe that such individuals are easily manipulated by anyone who understands their patterns. For if you know, someone will automatically take the opposite position of whatever is presented as mainstream truth, you can control their thinking simply by controlling what they perceive as mainstream. The mask grows heavier as you build your identity around contrarianism, as you develop communities and relationships based on shared opposition to prevailing views. Eventually, abandoning your contrary positions threatens not just your beliefs, but your entire social world, the networks of fellow skeptics and rebels who reinforce your sense of being among the few who truly see. You become trapped by the very stance that was supposed to represent intellectual freedom, unable to acknowledge when the mainstream position might be correct, because doing so would require admitting that your contrarianism was not genuine independence, but merely reactive thinking dressed in rebellious clothing. Machiavelli would counsel that authentic intellectual independence requires the most difficult courage, the willingness to agree with prevailing wisdom when evidence supports it, and to oppose it when evidence demands dissent, regardless of which position feels more comfortable or elevates your status among your chosen community. The removal of this mask demands that you develop genuine methods of investigation and evaluation, that you learn to assess claims based on their merit rather than their relationship to mainstream acceptance or rejection, that you become truly unpredictable by following evidence and reason wherever they lead, rather than following the predictable pattern of automatic opposition. The seventh and perhaps most sophisticated mask that Machiavelli would recognize in the corridors of modern intellectual life is the mask of synthesis, worn by those who believe that wisdom lies in finding middle ground between opposing positions, that intelligence means holding both sides of every argument in perfect balance, never committing fully to any position that might later prove extreme or mistaken. This mask transforms genuine dialectical thinking into a performance of false equivalence, replacing the difficult work of determining truth with the comfortable habit of declaring that the answer always lies somewhere in the middle, that all perspectives contain partial truths that must be integrated into some harmonious whole. The person wearing this mask has discovered that positioning yourself as the balanced, moderate voice in any debate provides social and intellectual benefits that more definitive positions do not. You appear wise because you can see merit in multiple perspectives, reasonable because you refuse to take extreme stances, sophisticated because you recognize complexity where others see only binary choices. This performance allows you to avoid the vulnerability of conviction while maintaining the appearance of thoughtful engagement, to participate in debates without ever taking positions that might later be proven wrong or that might alienate potential allies on either side of disputed questions. What Machiavelli understood about such individuals is that their supposed balance often represents not wisdom but intellectual cowardice, not genuine dialectical thinking, but the avoidance of difficult choices that reality sometimes demands. Some questions actually do have answers that lie at the extremes rather than in comfortable middle ground. Some positions genuinely are superior to their alternatives rather than being merely different perspectives on equally valid truths. The person who always seeks synthesis often does so not because synthesis represents the truth, but because it represents safety, allowing them to appear engaged while never risking the consequences of genuine commitment. This mask becomes particularly dangerous when it treats fundamentally unequal positions as though they merit equal consideration. When it creates false equivalences between carefully researched perspectives and baseless speculation, between conclusions supported by extensive evidence and claims rooted in ideology or prejudice. Machiavelli would note how this performance of balance can itself become a form of intellectual dishonesty, how treating all positions as partially valid, regardless of their actual merit, corrupts rather than clarifies understanding. The genuinely intelligent person must sometimes recognize that one side of a debate is simply correct and the other is mistaken, that synthesis is inappropriate when what is required is decisive judgment. Consider how this mask operates in your own intellectual life, the moments when you reflexively search for middle ground, not because the evidence points there, but because centrism feels safer than commitment. When you declare that truth lies between extremes before carefully examining whether those supposed extremes might actually represent clarity versus confusion, rather than two equally valid but partial perspectives. You have learned that appearing balanced elevates your status in certain contexts, makes you seem fair-minded and thoughtful, positions you as the reasonable voice in polarized debates. But beneath this performance may lie a reluctance to examine evidence carefully enough to reach definitive conclusions, a fear of the responsibilities that come with genuine conviction. The mask reveals itself most clearly in moments when genuine moral or intellectual clarity is required, when the facts of a situation demand a definitive stance rather than measured ambivalence. In these moments, the person wearing the mask of synthesis often becomes frustrated with reality for refusing to conform to their preference for balance, annoyed at situations that demand they choose sides rather than floating comfortably above the fray. They continue to perform centrism even when centrism represents not wisdom, but the abandonment of judgment, not balance, but the refusal to acknowledge what their own honest examination of evidence has revealed. What makes this mask particularly insidious is how it can coexist with genuine intellectual capacity, how you can be sincerely trying to think carefully while still using the performance of balance as a shield against the discomfort of conviction. You are not consciously being dishonest when you search for synthesis. You genuinely believe that wisdom requires seeing merit in all perspectives. That intellectual humility means refusing to declare any position entirely correct or incorrect. But Machiavelli would recognize that this belief itself can become a mask, that sometimes genuine humility requires the courage to say clearly what you have concluded rather than hiding behind the supposedly sophisticated claim that truth is always complex and elusive. The removal of this mask requires developing the discernment to recognize when synthesis represents genuine insight and when it represents the avoidance of necessary judgment, when balance reflects wisdom and when it reflects the fear of commitment. Machiavelli himself demonstrated this capacity, recognizing complexity where it existed while also stating clearly and unapologetically his conclusions about power, human nature, and political reality, even when those conclusions contradicted comfortable moral narratives. The goal is not to abandon nuanced thinking, but to develop the courage to draw conclusions from your analysis, to commit to positions when evidence warrants commitment, to recognize that declaring some perspectives superior to others is not intellectual arrogance, but the honest result of careful thought, undertaken with genuine integrity. You have journeyed through the gallery of masks, examined the faces we present to a world that demands performance over authenticity, intelligence as theater rather than genuine wisdom, seeking its natural expression. Machiavelli understood that power often flows to those who master appearance rather than substance, yet he also recognized the ultimate fragility of facades, how the mask eventually fuses to the flesh until the wearer loses all memory of what existed before the performance began. The question that haunts you now is not merely which mask you have been wearing, but whether you possess the courage to reach up with trembling hands and begin the delicate work of removal, knowing that what lies beneath may be tender and vulnerable, unaccustomed to exposure after years of careful concealment. The masks we have examined are not inherently evil. They emerged as adaptations to hostile environments, as protective mechanisms that helped you survive contexts where authentic intelligence would have marked you as dangerous or naive. Yet survival strategies that served you in one season of life become prisons in another, and the very defenses that once protected you now prevent the deeper wisdom that comes only through vulnerability and honest encounter with reality, unfiltered by strategic performance. Machiavelli would remind you that the wise prince knows when circumstances have changed sufficiently to demand new approaches, that clinging to outdated strategies out of habit or fear is the surest path to irrelevance and defeat. The removal of masks cannot be accomplished through will alone, through deciding to simply stop performing and revealing your authentic face to a world that may not welcome or understand it. Instead, the process requires developing new capacities that make the masks unnecessary, building genuine strength where you once had only protective facades, cultivating authentic insight that no longer requires the validation of appearing intelligent to others. You must learn to trust your own perceptions, even when they contradict established frameworks, to feel your emotions while thinking clearly through their implications, to question genuinely rather than performing skepticism, to commit decisively when evidence warrants rather than hiding behind false balance. This transformation will not be comfortable, for the masks have become so familiar that their absence initially feels like nakedness, like standing exposed before judges whose verdicts determine your survival. Yet Machiavelli would assure you that authentic power flows only to those willing to risk such exposure, that genuine influence emerges not from elaborate performances, but from the undeniable force of a mind that has liberated itself from the need to appear wise by becoming actually wise, deeply and honestly engaged with reality as it exists, rather than as you have been taught to perceive and present it. The masks must fall not because they are morally wrong, but because they have become functionally obsolete. Barriers between you and the genuine intelligence that has been waiting patiently beneath layers of performance, ready to emerge the moment you create space for its appearance. You stand now at the threshold between performance and authenticity, between the intelligence you have learned to display and the wisdom you have yet to fully access. Machiavelli wrote his Prince not to corrupt, but to illuminate, to remove comforting illusions and reveal the stark machinery of power and human nature as they actually operate in the unforgiving arena of real consequence. He would ask you now, which do you value more? The appearance of wisdom that opens certain doors while closing others, or the genuine article that may initially isolate you but ultimately connects you to reality with unprecedented clarity and force. The choice, as it always has been, remains yours alone, but the masks will not remove themselves, and every day you delay is another day of performance. Another sunrise where you wake to play a role rather than inhabiting the fullness of your authentic intelligence. If this exploration has stirred something within you, if you recognize in these descriptions the masks you have worn or are wearing still, then mark this moment by taking action that signals to yourself that you are ready for transformation rather than remaining a passive audience to your own life. Subscribe to this channel as an act of commitment to ongoing examination, like the decision to truly see rather than merely watching. Leave a comment sharing which mask you recognize most clearly in your own patterns, for naming the performance is the first step toward transcending it. Share this video with someone trapped in their own elaborate facades, for liberation rarely occurs in isolation, and your willingness to speak honestly about these patterns may give others permission to begin their own journey toward authenticity. Press like if you felt the weight of truth in these words, not to reward the messenger, but to acknowledge that something essential has been recognized and cannot now be unseen, that you have glimpsed what lies beneath the masks and found it both terrifying and strangely inviting, calling you toward a more genuine expression of the intelligence you were born possessing before the world taught you that performance matters more than presence. Appearance more than essence, the mask more than the face it was meant to conceal.